What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the regular season closing edition, in the Bengals case, season closing edition of this week's edition of Men in Stripes. A crazy, crazy week with a lot to talk about in the world of Bengal Dome. Not just a victory, but some off-the-field stuff, some trade rumors, draft picks, and free agency, man. We are in the season of off-season, which is where we actually started this show, Matt. We are coming up on a year old this month, so Tim Daniel here as always with Matt Wilson and Shelby Dermer. Gentlemen, how are we this evening?
Doing good.
Oh,
Man, a year now. Isn't that crazy? We're coming on a year.
what is it, February 7th?
I'm not.
No, but you're still part of the team, Shelby. We still like you.
Okay, I'll take it.
Yeah. So, guys, I guess, I would love to start this show talking about the Bengals' victory against the Baltimore Ravens, which we definitely will get to. But we got to touch on Adam Pac-Man Jones and his legal troubles yet again. Because, we hear all the time that he's a changed man. And, we did go a few years without him getting any legal trouble. There was the incident at the casino when he was asked to leave for being, I guess, disruptive, was I think the word was used. And, this incident, if you read up on it, sounds a little bit more serious. Though he says that he believes the charges will be dropped. That includes spitting on a jail nurse, putting his hands on a security guard, and I think there was, what was the other one? Resisting arrest, am I correct in that? He wouldn't get in the cop car. So,
Yes, resisting arrest.
yes, so this is, the Bengals are kind of at a crossroads with it now. And don't be wrong, one thing I can appreciate about the Bengals is they let the judicial system play out before they make a decision on the future of the player. And they've had to do this now a couple times with Adam Jones. And you can say what you want. He has been super kind to the community. He's done great things. Hell, he followed me on Twitter before I followed him. That's a cool thing for an athlete to do for his team's fans. And he has signed autographs for me as a fan. He has been super nice to me and done a lot of cool things. But these are things where, are the issues going to outweigh the talent? Now, we know he's long gone from the quote-unquote Pac-Man days of going to Vegas and throwing cash in the air and being involved, where there's shootings and circumstances like that he was in his early days in Tennessee, or his incident with the bodyguard when he was in Dallas. But this is still something that the Bengals have to look at here. So, Shelby, this is an aging corner, a guy who had a bad year, who has been outstanding since he's been in Cincinnati for the most part as a football player. But do these issues start to outweigh the talent, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, he did have a little bit of an off year. I think we've talked about it on the show that he aged a bit after he got that contract, and we saw it this year. He got burned by Odell Beckham in the Giants loss, got burned by Emmanuel Sanders against Denver. But this really can't help his cause too much. And, it's I read somewhere that he has more altercations with the police, or the same amount of altercations with the police as interceptions as a member of the Bengals. So, I know. I didn't want to read it, but I did. And I couldn't help to find it interesting. But, if there was any team in the NFL where you'd probably get away with stuff like this, you'd have to say it'd probably be the Bengals. Certainly Bill Belichick would have cut him by now. But I think it might be a little too early to tell. We got to wait till all the facts come out, and if he's confident that they'll get dismissed, and maybe they will be. But right now it just looks like another, him reverting back to the days where Jerry Jones pulled him off the practice field and he couldn't stay out of trouble in Dallas. And it might be time for the Bengals to cut ties with some guy if they're really confident with some of these young corners coming up. Before the incident, I would have said completely they need to. He has a spot on this team. I think he still has a great potential as a corner and a leader in that secondary. But after something like this happening, you have to question that.
And Matt, before we bring you in the conversation here, let's clear one thing up first things first. We are long gone away from the 06, 07 Bengals team where it was every other day it seemed like someone was getting arrested. You were reading about it. It's not that Bengal team anymore. And I've seen fans out there say typical Bengal player getting arrested and all that stuff. Like that's a common thing anymore, and it's not. And this is a terrible incident, but if you read it, it sounds like someone just had a little too much fun and drank a little too much, and his alcohol got the best of him. And that happens. It's not good. I'm not condoning it, but this is an interesting situation because like Shelby said, this does make that case a little more interesting. This does put the Bengals at the crossroads, especially with these young William Jacksons and Kavarie Russells and, even to an extent, Darqueze Dennard. You want to sign back Drake Kirkpatrick. Where are you on this case? How do you feel about it? Where would you go with this? What direction would you go moving forward with this Adam Jones case?
It's tough because all the facts truly aren't out there. We've got one side of the story for sure in terms of his. What doesn't help his case, and probably what wouldn't get dismissed, is the putting on a nurse and all this crap that he did after the fact. I mean, if you barely touch the guy, then okay, fine, get arrested, go to jail, do what you got to do, get out, and be done with it, and let the facts come out. Fine. When you do all the extracurricular stuff, that's where you get in trouble. And for these guys, what's important is somebody who is a good role model, who is a solid role model, and on and off the field. I mean, we saw a great example a couple years ago. Le'Veon Bell was caught smoking weed or in possession of weed with Garrett Blunt.
Didn't he admit he was smoking, though? Wasn't he like, I didn't know I could get arrested for that. I smoked when I came to the practice today.
Well, the funny thing is, he knows it's illegal. What he didn't know is that it was illegal to smoke and then drive.
Oh, that's right.
Because he got the DWI. And so the issue with keeping him here right this second is the fact that, okay, he's got to be a leader for these young players, especially somebody who's as influential as William Jackson III. And can you really trust a guy who has a lot of off-the-field troubles? Will he stay out of trouble? Will the NFL, especially if everything goes on with the police, even if he's exonerated from the assault charge, the question there's going to be, is the NFL going to look at the police aspect and say, listen, we got to suspend you again because it's unbecoming of a player? I mean, there's so many different things that could come of this, and it doesn't look good for him, at least at this point. And when you're talking about the fact that Shelby brought up, he has just as many arrests as he does interception with the Bengals. I mean, not I guess the plus side is he still has more personal fouls than arrests, but there's just a lot of doubt there when it comes to his leadership ability, especially off the field.
So let's wait for this to play out and see how I'm sure this will be a story we'll touch on in the next couple weeks as things are coming out and how this is going to play into the future of the Bengals. But guys, let's talk happiness, man, because this hasn't been a happy year, and we've been pretty well documented on that, and we have something to be happy about, and that's ending the season on a victory. That's Andy Dalton crossing the 4,000-yard mark for the second time and coming pretty close to breaking that franchise record that he owns. That's Rex Burkhead showing what he can do on the field, going for 122 yards. CJ Uzomah getting his first career touchdown. Kavarie Russell getting his first career interception. Man, if you would have told me...
Alex Erickson winning the kick return title.
Yeah, Alex Erickson winning the kick return title. Thank you, Shelby. If you would have told me before that game that one of those teams was just got away from the playoffs and the other was looking at a top 10 draft pick, and I wasn't a fan, I would think it was the Baltimore Ravens that were the top 10 draft pick because the Bengals dominated them. Now, I know there was nothing to play for, but there was pride on the line in this game for sure. It's the AFC North. It's Steve Smith's last game of his NFL career, who took a hit from Sean Williams. Oh, man. And
how's that a foul?
Yeah, I agree. And because it's Steve Smith. And a lot of crazy things just happened, but Shelby, you and I were in attendance. We saw a lot of good things in this game. A lot of athletic plays we haven't seen from this secondary all year. That Sean Williams interception was beautiful. I know it was off a tip, but read it so well. On the offense,
it wasn't off a tip.
No, it wasn't off. I'm sorry. I'm mistaken there. But he was just in great position, made a play there. On the offensive side, that play action they ran to give Uzomah his first career touchdown was incredible, beautifully executed, and of course,
yeah.
Rex Burkhead 128 yards rushing, and hitting the hole perfectly, what we haven't seen from a Bengals running back all year. So in the final game of the year, because remember this is the last game we can talk about until preseason next year, what stood out to you and made you excited about the future prospects of the Cincinnati Bengals from week 17?
Well, I mean, it has to be Rex Burkhead. I mean, it was kind of a dress rehearsal for free agency. The Ravens had the best run defense in the conference, and I don't want to take away anything from Burkhead, but the Ravens, they just looked down after losing in that fashion to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have loved to see this game had Baltimore, because Baltimore, if they would have beat Pittsburgh, they would have needed to beat the Bengals to still win the division.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have liked to see like what that, if it would have been any different, but you got to take it from how it went down. We saw a lot of good things, but I think it had to be Burkhead. He was hitting the hole. He bailed Andy Dalton out when he was under pressure, a little shovel pass. Then
that was awesome.
He broke a tackle. Then he carried two guys with him for 11 yards and a first down. Started the day with a 17-yard run right up the middle. Had I think 60% of his yards were after contact, and this is against a good Ravens defense. And of course, like I said, I'm throwing away the lack of effort reports that came out. But but there were some other good things too. Cody Core had a 31-yard catch. Tyler Boyd only had 2 catches, but they gave him a reverse run for 10 yards. Would have liked to see him get out of bounds there at the end of the half.
Me too.
Randy Bullock made all his field goals. Brandon LaFell made his incentives from his contract. Alex Harrison won the kick return title. Kavari Russell got a gimme from Ryan Mallett. Let's call it how it is. But still a pick on his first snap. Pretty remarkable. Wallace Gilberry had a sack. I would have thought he was on the sidelines, honestly. I don't know why he would play in this game. But overall, good day. But topping the list would have to be Burkhead. First 100-yard rusher against the Ravens by a Bengal since Ced Benson in 2009. That miracle game at M&T Bank Stadium. Just a good day for Burkhead, and hoping the Bengals bring him back.
So, Matt, there's this thing in the NFL where it seems like there's just some teams that have the other team's number. And in our case, let's call it what it is, guys. It's Pittsburgh. And it's Houston for some reason, too. Like, just seem to beat the Bengals every time they play them. So we're going to go back now to, since the first time the Dalton won the division in 2013, Shelby, I know, correct me if I'm wrong here, the Bengals have now won 6 of 7 against the Baltimore Ravens since then, because they beat them week 17 that year. Then they swept the next 2 years. They lost
6 of 8.
6 of 8, thank you. So that's since the Green Hail Mary game. So
since that they've won. They've only lost 1.
Yeah,
that was this year.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. So I said it correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but so Matt, is it easy to say now? I know what those records say, and I know if it was a long time to take. I mean, even in those Chad Johnson years, the Bengals still handled Baltimore pretty well. It was pretty more even. But is it safe to say the Bengals might have John Harbaugh and staff's number?
It's one of those things that if the Bengals would have won in Baltimore this year, I would have absolutely agreed. But then again, this defense wasn't playing anything like it was. So I really think this defense has kind of Baltimore's number for the most part.
They played great that day.
The defense?
Against Baltimore this year, first meeting?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. Why am I thinking that they didn't do as hot? I don't know.
It was 19-14, but Justin Tucker hit 4 50-yarders.
That's right.
They gave up 1 touchdown. It came on the opening drive.
They played the bend but not break game with the offense that wasn't spectacular.
Right, that's the first game without Gio and AJ.
That's right. But with this team, I mean, obviously the offense has been down. This defense has had their number. But the offense didn't this year, at least until this game. They kind of got back on track. So, I mean, is it safe to say that the Bengals have the number? I think it's safe to say the defense does. I'm still struggling with the offense just because, we saw so many hiccups. Granted, Andy Dalton had a great season for what it was. But we saw kind of the offense take a step back. They couldn't get into the end zone a lot of times. We were frustrated with red zone attempts. We had a kicker who couldn't make a field goal to save his life or an extra point. And so there was a lot of scoring woes for this team. So they need to get better there. But this was a great step towards next season and trying to erase the memory of everything that happened.
And people seem, I saw this week ESPN had, take that for what it is. ESPN had an article of the top 10 teams that made the playoffs last year that will be back for the 2017 postseason. And Baltimore was on there over the Bengals. And I went and sat there and thought about it for a second. I get there's a lot of free agency questions with the Bengals, but I went, no. I get it. This is Flacco's first year back from his injury. But I feel confident in the Bengals running group compared to Baltimore's. I feel much more confident in the Bengals receiving group compared to Baltimore's. And, like you said, Shelby, this is a good Baltimore defense that, played a lot of really good games. But I still trust the crew where you're looking at potentially adding some speed in the draft to go along with guys like Vontez and Carlos Dunlap, who've had great years. You're going to get another year under your belt of, these secondary guys who are really getting their first starting experiences. You're going to get Andrew Billings back, hopefully healthy. You're going to get William Jackson back, hopefully healthy. So I feel like, and I understand the Bengals don't really know who's going to kick for them next year, where the Ravens already know they have Justin Tucker coming for back, who got an MVP vote, by the way. Props on that, JT. But I feel like if you're comparing the two as far as the next couple years, and I'm not just saying that because they're my team, I feel like I trust the Bengals near future slightly more than I do the Ravens near future.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I've said it before, Flacco is one of the very few quarterbacks that I'm not afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've seen the Bengals pick him off 4 times in a game before. That was back in 2010, week 2. And
I was at that game.
Yeah, 15-10 final. And on defense, C.J. Mosley, Elvis Dumerville are good. Terrell Suggs is at the end of his line. Their corners are shaky. Down the stretch, their defense wasn't as good. I know, they still had the best run defense in the conference, but it's kind of shaky too because they let Ryan Matthews run for over 100. The Eagles were a 2-point conversion away from winning that game in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
An Eagles team the Bengals completely dominated, while Philadelphia was still in the playoff hunt, mind you. But yeah, and then the receiving course, Steve Smith's retiring, leaves you with Brashard Perriman, Kamar Aiken, off the top of my head, the 2 receivers. Mike Wallace was a good pickup.
Yeah.
And Dennis Pitt is a good tight end. And then their running backs, Terrence West, Kenneth Dixon, okay, maybe something's there. But the Bengals, Jeremy Hill, as much as we love to bash him and Bernard have proven themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. And back to if the Bengals have their number, I think it's safe to say that they do. Not to the extent that they have Cleveland's number.
No.
Where it's
that's easy to say.
It's almost a guaranteed sweep anymore. But Cleveland we kind of leave out of any arguments. But Marvin Lewis he's 18-11 against Baltimore. He's only and how many times did the Steelers sweep the Bengals?
God.
I mean, it's honest. 2014 they did. This year. They beat us twice last year if you count the playoffs, so 2 out of 3. But with the Ravens, the Bengals under Marvin Lewis, they've only been swept by the Ravens twice in Lewis's tenure. That was 2008. Both games were started by Ryan Fitzpatrick, and then that was Dalton's rookie year in 2011. They lost 2 games, both by a touchdown, including the AFC North title game in Week 17 when Ray Rice went off.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
So, I mean, I think it's safe to say I'd much rather have the Steelers numbered, quite honestly.
Sure, I would too.
But, it's something about it with the Ravens. It's Joe Flacco against Cincinnati. He went up to Heinz Field and had a great game on Christmas Day. And honestly played well enough to win. And then comes back to Cincy, lays an egg, throws an awful goal line interception, which is what the Bengals defense has needed all season, a big red zone turnover. Interesting to look that up. Maybe it might be the first red zone turnover of the season, except Tyrod Taylor's pick, Drake Kirkpatrick's toe tap.
Oh yeah.
In that game. But I think it's safe to say the Bengals had their number.
So we'll touch on this real quick before we go down the rest of the way. Both of you, start with you, Matt. And all this list of Bengals free agents that are coming up, who's priority one to you? Who's the guy that has to be back on this team next year? Who do they have to make sure they sign when free agency opens?
Andrew Whitworth. I mean, we saw Cedric Ogbuehi not do anything this year, and he was absolutely terrible. You got to shore up the line, and the only way to do that at this point with somebody who knows the team, knows the plays, knows the tendencies of Andy Dalton is Andrew Whitworth. You've got to bring in the protection there because that's something that he honestly, this team struggled with, and Andrew Whitworth seemed to be able to move around the line and do his job. Granted, there were a couple holdings, and I got frustrated at him for it.
Jesus, that's an understatement.
Yeah, well, it's better to try to get away with a holding than let somebody absolutely obliterate your quarterback.
Retweet.
Yeah.
So, if there's one guy that's kind of by any means necessary who is going to protect Andy Dalton, that's Andrew Whitworth. And with if Cedric Ogbuehi had come in and he had set the world on fire and he was a decent. I actually even shouldn't say that. Even if he didn't set the world on fire, if he was even a half decent, tackle this year, I think you're okay to let him go. But he didn't, and so you're left with him, Fisher, and then you got to worry about the interior guys because, if I'm not mistaken, Zeitler's contract is up, and so that leaves that basically leaves hoping that you get. Why am I blanking on who they brought in last year's draft?
Westerman?
Yes, thank you. You got to hope that Westerman is going to be a good interior guy. If he's not, Whitworth brings another aspect that you can kind of shift him on the inside and worry about maybe the two guys on the outside with the edge. I mean, so he's got a lot of flexibility there.
Matt, I'm with you there. And you made a great point. If Fisher and Ogbuehi proved that they could play this year, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I would like to say Zeitler's up there in importance too, just because he was an All-Pro. I think Pro Football Focus rated him on their All-Pro team. And but I would say right now their most important one I would say is Drake Kirkpatrick, just because of what just happened with Pac-Man. If for some reason Pac-Man's suspended, hopefully not released, and they can't get Kirkpatrick back, who had a great second half of this season, as the entire defense did. I think it's Drake Kirkpatrick just because, if he goes, what do you have? You have Tavari Russell, who's played one snap, Darqueze Dennard, who's been shaky when he's not injured, William Jackson III's never played, Josh Shaw showed flashes, and, other than that, you got a really inexperienced defensive back group. So I'm going to go with Drake Kirkpatrick just because of the recent events with Pac-Man and his future possibly being in jeopardy.
We're all three going to have someone different, so that's interesting to me. I actually am going to go with Kevin Zeitler. I think that, one, we're talking to a guy that played 100% of the snaps this year. That's huge, especially in the offensive line. Two, that's a guy that really, graded really well, and has been, a consummate pro since he got here. And you're thinking, he's going to get a payday. If David DeCastro gets 8 years for $55 million, not 8 years, 5-6 years, I'm sorry. What the hell is it going to look like for Kevin Zeitler, who has graded out better than him? I think, because the honest truth is, guys, there's no way that Whitworth and Zeitler are both going to be Bengals next year. I just don't see a case where if you sign one, the other stays, because someone's going to offer them money. And I do lean more that it will be Whitworth that signs over Zeitler, but I also am looking at a 35-year-old offensive tackle who, although has played well, is 35 years old, where you have this 27, 28-year-old offensive guard who has constantly showed up for work every day and played well and worked his ass off, not that Whitworth hasn't, and could really still be a part of your future as your offensive line gets it back together.
I'm with you, Tim. I mean, I said Zeitler and Whitworth are kind of equal importance, but with the age there's different factors because Zeitler's younger, of course, but Whitworth also has the ability to come in and play guard. And it really hurt Zeitler. With Clint Bowling, the other guard, playing all season with a separated shoulder. You think, how is Zeitler an All-Pro and Jeremy Hill still in the Bengals offensive line still giving up that many sacks, and Jeremy Hill still can't find any holes to run through? And Bowling got surgery on his shoulder last week, so hopefully he's back 100%. And you just hope, because Russell Bodine played pretty well after he was benched in that Baltimore game. But yeah, like what you said, it's hard seeing both of them being back next year in Cincinnati.
So, speaking of guys that more than likely won't be back, I'm sure you guys have heard about this guy. He's a backup quarterback for the Bengals. He won a national championship in Alabama, started a couple games last year. And according to Cincinnati Bengal fans, he's the greatest quarterback to ever play in this franchise. That includes a franchise that includes Anderson, Esiason, Cook, Palmer, and Dalton. Yeah, he's better than all of them. All of them. And we know that by 4 games. I'm joking hardcore. But A.J. McCarron has mentioned that he is preparing like he won't be a Bengal next year. And he certainly understands the reasoning. The Bengals, has come out and said they would like to move him if they can. Said, there's going to be a trade demand out there because no matter how bad all these free agent quarterback deals have been, i.e., looking at you, Matt Flynn, looking at you, Brock Osweiler, starting in a playoff game this week.
Matt Castle,
yes. People are still forking out money for quarterbacks because they just want to hit the point. So it's looking like what I saw the asking price right now for what Lapp said on Bengals Growler on Monday night. That show he does with Lance McAllister. He's saying that it's going to take a second and a fourth to get A.J. McCarron, which I think that's good value for him, truthfully. Actually, I think that's too good a value for him, but I still believe that someone out there will pay it. But, Matt, this is, again, we're talking about a case of a guy that played 5 NFL games, counting going in the Steelers game. No, 4. I'm giving him an extra game.
No, you had it right. He had 3. He had 3 games, and then he had the
yeah, I'm right.
Playoff game, and then I believe week 14. So 15, 16, 17 plus the playoff is 4 starts, and then he had 1, or he came in for the Steelers, and then he had 2 earlier in the season where basically all the other teams were out of it, so he came in. So he played actually a total of 7 games last season. I'm saying he played a total of 7 games. That's according to his stat record.
We're not.
Yeah, he played in the Cleveland and St. Louis game.
Yep.
3 passes in both of them.
Yep. So, the big thing there, I think, is people are enamored with the unknown. They saw something. They saw at least a glimmer of hope that he can at least be a 500 quarterback. And that people like Cleveland are begging for a 500 quarterback at least. Because they can barely win 1 game, so the big question there I think is going to be who's willing to pay the price, and do you really want, if say Cleveland were to ante up and try to pay the price, would you really want him to face him? Would you want to see him go to a divisional team?
No.
That's my answer is absolutely not. But I think if the Browns ante up enough. Mike Brown, he's looking at the money aspect. He's looking at what can he get back, and he won't think twice about if the team's in the division. Unfortunately, because that's Mike Brown. I would love to see him go to a team out west that you're only going to face once in a blue moon. I heard the 49ers are thinking about a quarterback because a guy named Colin Kaepernick sucks.
Yeah, he does
so
suck.
I would love to see him go out there.
Conference championship winner Colin Kaepernick?
Yeah, I know, right?
Gosh.
But I mean that's where I think the landing zone is going to be, is one of those bottom teams who are begging for a quarterback. I don't think you'll see a team like the Denver Broncos want to take another risk. I see the Denver Broncos pushing hard to try to get Tony Romo compared to, and that's going to be the other issue, is the number of quarterbacks who are kind of out there that people are anticipating with Kirk Cousins, with
Tyrod Taylor.
I'm not even coming close to him.
The GOAT.
But when you think of Tony Romo possibly being on the free market with what Dak's done this year, I mean, so you really got to look at the aspect of, okay, you have two quarterbacks that have proven that they can be starters, and then you got one who has only proven to be a 500 quarterback. They may ante up for the quarterbacks that are proven more than they will the 500. So we have to wait and see what his value is because of that.
Well, Shelby, I'm going to cut you off here. My apologies on that. But I think where Dak comes in is, you're right. Romo's going to be out there probably. Like, someone's going to make a deal for Tony Romo. If he plays, there's a chance that Romo might retire. I mean, likely? Probably not. But that is still a possibility, especially because, what more does he have to prove? We're still out there when how things have been going these past couple of years, and his injuries and all the problems he's had. And he's also 37 years old. Now, Polian said that he thinks McCarron's going to be the most sought-after quarterback. I agree, strictly because this is a guy that doesn't have a lot of wear and tear. I know he had an injury his rookie year, but, like we saw, there was that recovery there. And I think that the fourth quarter I saw him play in the playoffs was one of the most fun quarterback performances I've ever seen. Only the fourth quarter. The rest of the game, not so much. And it was great, and it made me have some hope for, say, hell yeah, the Bengals have a good backup quarterback. And I think that that's going to be interesting to see where how things work out there for them. But I think when I go back to my point is here, you're right. San Francisco's going to a quarterback, and I would not be shocked if the Niners go out and try to get Romo. I wouldn't be shocked if the Jets try to go out and get Romo. But those same teams that we're mentioning, I wouldn't be shocked if they try to kick the tires and see what they would have to give up to get McCarron either.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing I think with AJ McCarron that at least threw a red flag his rookie year is all of a sudden it wasn't the fact that he pushed himself hard to try to make his team the best possible. It was that Nick Saban pushed him too hard. He played the blame game, and I think when teams do look at things, because let's face it, these scouts, these teams say like New England, Bill Belichick, look at everything. They look at the whole history of the team. What is he going to bring, and what kind of problems could he possibly provide? Say something does happen. Now all of a sudden, if XY player would have made a block, I wouldn't have gotten a concussion, and now you have a rapport issue with his guys. So, for me, I'm looking at the whole history and knowing also who's out there. It's going to be one of those that it definitely has to be a wait-and-see process because of, as I said, because of the guys who are out there with Kirk Cousins and possibly Tony Romo. And I did not even come close to thinking Tony Romo was 37.
Yeah,
wow, I'm old.
Isn't that crazy?
I know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we get there. It looks like Shelby, we got you back here, man. So I know we've had some tech Ds over there. So what are your thoughts, man, on this? I know you had an article planned. You were writing on McCarron, and you thought it was the right move. We've touched on some teams there like, the Jets, the Niners. Teams are going to be looking for quarterbacks next year. What are your thoughts on that compared to the Romo-McCarron saga as far as guys that will be available? Anyone else that really jumps out to you that might be available that might put a snag on here? Because I truthfully believe that Cousins will be back in Washington next year.
Yeah, I do too. And my article is up on there, 1,800 words on AJ McCarron and why the Bengals should trade him. And you were describing McCarron as the championship from Alabama, and I thought you were still talking about Greg McElroy was still on the Bengals roster. I was a little disappointed. I got excited after that, but yeah, you were talking about McCarron, but I think it's time to trade him, because if for some reason you're stingy, you don't get a deal done. He sits on the sidelines again next season, then after that he walks, and you get nothing from him. Dalton's under contract until 2020. He's going to stay there, especially after having a season like this. And as much as McCarron's reputation of a winner has followed him everywhere as a competitor, he still only averaged less than 200 yards a game last year with the same cast that Dalton was an MVP candidate with. even at college at Alabama, barely cracked 200 yards on average in his 3 seasons as a starter. I think he was at 212 was his average per game with Alabama. He was handing it off to Heisman winners.
Had Amari Cooper.
In his first touchdown pass in college went to Julio Jones. And I can see why they didn't trade him before this season with Dalton's thumb injury. And, if he were for some reason to go down this last season, 2016, I don't know whether to say this season or last season. But if he would have went down again, McCarron has some experience under his belt, and you still have this offseason to trade him, so it's do or die time. I think you're looking at like a second and a fourth round pick, which was what they denied from a team last offseason, an unnamed team. As far as potential landing spots, Denver's not going to go after McCarron with less experience than Simeon, and they just spent a first rounder on Paxton Lynch. Buffalo, I think, might. If especially if Tyrod Taylor's not back. EJ Manuel's also a free agent, leaving only Cardell Jones on the roster. San Francisco's definitely up there, who I would love to see McCarron go to. Yep. But, the most logical choice is Cleveland, unfortunately, because, Hugh Jackson was his former offensive coordinator, and it just makes sense. And it's a real Pandora's box to if Cleveland offers you the necessary picks, because Cleveland has 5 picks in the top 65, and they have more in the later rounds once the NFL distributes how do you say that? Compensatory picks. Yeah, journalism major. So if Cleveland offers you that, like you said, Matt, Mike Brown, he won't care if it's in the division. But as much as I bash McCarron's numbers, his resume as a winner, really scares me if he were to go to Cleveland, and you'd have to face him twice a year.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Cleveland does make the most sense considering, like you mentioned, the draft picks, who the coach is, but and the quarterback class coming out. As much as I have a guy that I'm excited about in this group, I'm not exactly gushing over this quarterback draft class. It's a scout's will, because like I said, people will do anything to find a quarterback. Like they will do, and you can't blame franchise for that. Everyone wants an Aaron Rodgers or a Tom Brady or a Drew Brees. Those aren't fair.
Or Andy Dalton,
Right, yeah, I was going to say, those aren't fair, because those are like once-in-a-generation talents. And, I get if you want to put, so I think that's going to be an interesting case. I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out, because I think that this could be a really big thing there for, McCarron's career, what happens with the Bengals. You must think that they're confident in Jeff Driscoll as the backup quarterback if they're going this route then, right? Like, that has to be the case?
He won the New Orleans Bowl as a member of at Louisiana Tech, so give him some cred.
He was the number 1 recruit in high school.
Equals GOAT.
Yes. High school GOAT. Yeah.
I was bummed they let go of Keith Wenning, because he's kind of an Ohio hero at Coldwater.
Yeah?
But,
Did he get a tryout anywhere else after that?
He's with the Giants now, practice squad.
Oh, is he really? Cool, good for him.
You can read about it on stripehive.com.
I remember, do you remember going to week 17 last year where McCarron got hurt in the Monday night game, and we were actually thinking we might have to start Keith Wenning in week 17?
Total confidence.
Yes. Yeah. That'd have been great. Awesome.
Re-sign Greg McElroy as Wenning's backup.
I had met Greg McElroy one time, actually, when I was working at Lids as a manager. He came into my store when he signed in Cincinnati, and he was super cool. It was right after the national championship when Alabama beat Notre Dame really bad, and I had a Notre Dame hat on, so he made sure he made a joke at me, and I got a good laugh out of it. I understood, but it didn't make me feel good.
Aw, poor Tim.
Yeah.
And he's retired now.
Yeah, he's doing commentary for the SEC. So
everyone is.
Greg MC doing big things, man. Doing big things. All right, guys. So we've touched on a lot here on this show, so we have a lot to talk about. we now know that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be picking 9th overall in the draft.
Today.
Yeah, and I'm upset about a bad season, but at the same point, like, unless you're the Patriots, I have to give look at the positive side of this. Unless you're the Patriots, not many teams are building dynasties drafting in the 20s and later. I mean, the Packers are in the playoffs every year too, but other than those two, it's pretty hard to keep finding diamonds that late in the draft. So this is bound to happen, man. This is how the NFL goes, and unless, like I said, unless you are the Patriots or the Packers, like, you're going to go through this. Hell, the Dallas Cowboys are the number 1 team in the NFC. Last year, they had the 4th pick in the draft because of how their season went. So this is just how it goes. And so this is a pretty decent group of talent in this draft. The Bengals have some needs to look at, whether it be speed linebacker, offensive line, another if they don't re-sign Brandon LaFell, which I think they will, getting another wide receiver to go with AJ. Your uncertainty with Rex Burkhead, how Giovanni Bernard recovers. Like, there's a lot to look to in this draft. And especially that 9th pick. Shelby mentioned the Browns getting some compensatory picks. The Bengals are going to get some too because of Sanu and Jones and Reggie Nelson. Yep. So that's going to help them out as well. So, is there any guys particular, Shelby, you weren't on the show last week. We kind of Matt and I talked about it a bit. Any guys particular in this draft and prospects you stand out as far as Bengal needs? Because I'm very fond of Reuben Foster, the linebacker from Alabama, a 4.3 speed linebacker, something the Bengals don't have. So he's a guy that definitely jumps out at me. Is there any other position, any certain player that you think the Bengals should go and try to get?
Well, I was going to say Foster, just because I love the idea of a linebacker. Not so sure about the 9th pick. The last time we had the 9th pick, we took Keith Rivers, and that was a jaw-dropping selection.
Damn it! You took my pun! I was going to make that joke!
I made that joke about Kevin Huber, too, and he retweeted it. So, as far as, this is why I meant to write something on this, never did. It was, that's why I was rooting for the Bengals to win when they were eliminated, just because there's not a specific position you need, because it's an anomaly. Because at linebacker you think, okay, you obviously Ray Maluga's old, Vontaze Burfict's always in trouble and hurt, but you got Nick Vigil stepping up. Okay, so shift to offensive line. You just had a terrible year protecting Andy Dalton. Well, you still have Cedric Ogbuehi and Jake Fisher. They haven't been great, but they're still unproven. In the middle, you have T.J. Johnson backing up Russell Bodine. You have Westerman they just drafted. You have Trey Hopkins. So you never know there. At corner, Adam Jones is old, but you still have guys climbing up the ranks that can climb up the ranks. Darquez Denard, William Jackson III, Kavari Russell, Josh Shaw played well. So there's not one specific position that stands out. It's like in 2013, the Bengals didn't need Tyler Eifert with their first-round pick. I mean, the teams were transitioning into that 2 tight end system, but Jermaine Gresham was still 25 years old at that time. And the Bengals, their draft strategy, which has been great, Duke Tobin and company doing great work in the draft department, always go after the best available player. And that's why, if Reuben Foster's not there, who I would like personally, I would like another left guard or another corner, even though I know you don't like them drafting corners in the first round, Tim. So there's a lot of needs on this team that could use a first round upgrade, but that's still unproven with guys that can climb up the depth chart and possibly be a quality starter here in the next couple seasons.
All right, Matt, you being over there loving your Clemson Tigers as you do. Let's play this game here, man. Now, you're going to be in my boat last year. If you remember, I very, very much wanted the Bengals to draft a certain wide receiver from my favorite school. And he got taken a few picks before that we picked. So, let's go here. We both mentioned Foster. You did a mock draft for Foster. We've mentioned Derek Barnett, who can really go in there and fill in those Michael Johnson's shoes of his age. Let's say, for some reason or another, those two are gone. Yep. Mike Williams is on the board, the number 1 wide receiver who has drawn some godly comparisons, including Adriel Jeremiah Green. I understand that there is a situation with Brandon LaFell, and you have Tyler Boyd, and you have Cody Core, who made some things happen this year when he got a chance to play.
Keep going.
Would you take Mike Williams?
It depends. Is Jabril Peppers still there?
Do you really want him, though?
Well, he's the all-around player, and as we kind of talked about last week, he almost kind of reminds me of a Ryan Shazier, a player that can essentially make a difference all over the field. He's not just a one-position player. So I do like Jabril Peppers before I like Mike Williams. But at the same time, I think if you have the opportunity to get somebody who is going to be that weapon, if you bring in somebody like that, I think that kind of shifts your game plan, because I think now you're looking at Tyler Boyd being kind of what Mohamed Sanu was, where he was all over the field. He could throw the ball. I mean, we've seen Tyler Boyd has played quarterback. If I'm not mistaken, he played quarterback in high school. He has played running back. He played running back at Pitt when James Conner was down with cancer. And he's played wide receiver. So I think you really have to use him in more of a utility role, more than what they did this season. And then that would leave Mike Williams and A.J. Green to kind of do the whole Marvin Jones, A.J. Green type thing. And so I like him. I think he would be a great asset to this team. I still think you're looking defense first, unless you really look at it and go, okay, Peppers is off the board. Reuben Foster's off the board. All those guys coming off the board. If you're really looking at it being already a depleted defense, then I think you go Mike Williams and you don't have a second reservation against it.
Yeah, it makes it interesting, and we're going to be talking about this for a long time, guys. But let's go ahead and wrap this week with our playoff picks here as we go ahead and get out of here and enjoy our week. So, not many games to pick from, so we literally could technically do Lightning this week, and it'd be Lightning-ish, but since we don't have as many games, we can give a little more thoughts on there also if we want to. And let's start with the first game, the rematch of the Battle of Mexico on Monday Night Football a few weeks ago. A little different this time, as the Houston Texans will be led by Brock Osweiler at home as for winning the AFC South to take on the Oakland Raiders, who will be led by Connor Cook, making his first playoff start. There's something about rookies that like to win playoff games in Houston, so maybe that keeps up this week. This is a game I've gone back and forth on. I don't love either team's situation currently. I like the Raiders having more players that they can go to in this game, but at the same time, Derek Carr not being there, as we saw last week, really does make things change a lot for the Raiders. If Derek Carr were in this game, no doubt about it, I'm picking the Raiders going to Houston and dominate. But for some reason or another, I just think Lamar Miller's going to be able to run. He's going to be able to keep Oakland off the field. And I don't truly trust Connor Cook yet to the point where I can say, man, this game's close. He can go get them back in this and win it. So, unfortunately, guys, I will take the Houston Texans for the first playoff game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Houston, too. Just because they are playing at home. They still have a great defense. Romeo Crennel against a guy making his first ever start. Pains me that either Connor Cook or Brock Osweiler is going to get their first playoff win before Andy Dalton. Mm-hmm. But, that's the way the straws were drawn. And, I think Lamar Miller is a big X factor in this game. He's healthy. Missed that game against the Bengals. Alfred Blue filled in, had the touchdown. And I think, playing at home really helps in this game. They always play better at home. And, Brock Osweiler honestly didn't look too bad in that first matchup with Oakland, and I don't think the Raiders' defense is anything to write home about. So I'm going to take Houston at home.
Yeah, I don't like Oakland's defense. They've proven to be a weak point for this team constantly. I like the Texans in this one. I don't like the fact, same thing. I don't like I don't like either team in this game, but the Texans are the better one with who they have at this point.
So that brings us to this next matchup, also on Saturday night in the Link, where we know the Seahawks love to play home playoff games in the Link, And incoming is the Detroit Lions, who were just a game away from having a home playoff game, and this being the Packers heading to Seattle. But that is not how things worked out. And I have liked what the Lions have done this year with Jim Caldwell and crew, for not having a true running game, for Matthew Stafford throwing ridiculous amount of times, for Golden Tate and Marvin Jones making plays. We talked about Andy Dalton not having his first playoff win, Shelby. Marvin Jones won't either. I'm going with the Seahawks at home to win this one. I think in a playoff game, I just trust Russell Wilson a little bit more than I trust Matt Stafford.
Yeah, and I trust a Seattle defense at home. Granted, they lost Earl Thomas, but they have Michael Bennett back against a one-dimensional Lions team. And I just don't see it where Detroit can go in and beat Seattle at the 12th man.
I'm a little different here. I'm going to go Lions. If for anything else, I think I'm going Lions just because I think that Seattle's going to struggle with the passing game of the Lions, with all the tools they have. When you look at Marvin Jones, you look at Golden Tate, and you look at these guys, and you kind of go, okay, they've got 2 number 1 wide receivers. How is Seattle going to cover that? And yes, I know they have some talented defensive backs, but at the same time, you've got to cover everybody, and I think that's what Seahawks are going to struggle with. I haven't really seen too much of a high-powered offense out of the Seattle. They've shown flashes of it this season, but at the same time, it's still not the same Seattle team that we're used to, of course, with Marshawn Lynch. I think that's a huge disadvantage for Seattle this year.
So it brings us to Sunday's games, where we unfortunately have the AFC North champion Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the Miami Dolphins, who... The Miami Dolphins beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, if you remember. Matt picked that game and picked that result. Yeah. But, guys, this has Ben Roethlisberger in the playoffs, which really has been much better than Andy Dalton. Just one more win, and that was against the Bengals in that meltdown. This is the 3 Bs of Ben, Bell, and Brown making plays without Ryan Tannehill on the other side of the field. Not that it would really matter if Ryan Tannehill was there. I don't love him like people do. I don't get it. But
no.
I will say that I expect Le'Veon Bell to be able to make plays as always. This is a guy that averaged 100 yards rushing, 50 yards receiving per game this year. This is a team that the Steelers know how to make things happen, use their weapons. And I think the Pittsburgh Steelers, as much as I hate to say it, will be able to play it will continue their season for at least another week.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Pittsburgh too. They play down to competition. Yeah, they do a lot in the regular season, it seems like. As far as the postseason, maybe that loss to Tebow is the biggest one that stands out, honestly. But, this game's at home. The Steelers are probably up there with Kansas City, a team they dominated at home before they lost to Miami, as one of the hottest teams in football, along with the Packers in the NFC. That's why all 3 of them will host a playoff game this month. Jay Ajayi went off against the Steelers when they were without Ryan Shazier. I think that plays a role in it. This was also a game that was on the road. Probably took them lightly. Ben Roethlisberger was got hurt in that game too. I don't know how big of a part that played. As much as I'd love to see the Dolphins pull this out, I still find them not to be contenders yet. They were 4 yards away from losing to the 49ers at home. They followed that by going to Baltimore and getting creamed by a non-playoff team. As much as I'd like it, I just don't see Matt Moore going to Heinz Field and beating Big Ben and the Killer Bees in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I'm hoping Kansas City gets their revenge on the Steelers next week, because there's no way Matt Moore's beating the Steelers. Much as I would love to see it, as much as I think the Steelers play down to their competition, especially when they know their competition's down, I still don't see a way that Ben Roethlisberger doesn't play another week.
All right, guys, so last game this week is I have picked all the home teams. I think Shelby has too, actually, yeah. We're on the same brainwave this week. So I'm going to keep that tradition going. I'm not going to lie to you. You know why? Because there's a guy that plays quarterback in Green Bay named Aaron Rodgers, and he's really good at this football thing. And he's got to play the New York Football Giants, who have had a good year. They've made some things happen. Eli was Mr. 26-16. But Aaron Rodgers is riding a hot streak. They have been unstoppable. It seems like they've won every game since he said they were going to run the table. And I think they're going to continue to do that. They're going to win this game in Lambeau. They're going to go play Atlanta the next week. And they're going to make some noise there, too, and that's going to be a fun game to watch. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to make a lot of plays here, as much as I do like what that Giants defense has done, especially in the secondary. Landon Collins has been really good for them. But I trust Rodgers. I trust Jordy. I trust Randall Cobb. And as much as it's cool that Odell Beckham's finally going to play in a playoff game for his sake, I don't think I shouldn't say that, because Eli's done this before twice now. And if any of these wildcard teams are going to win, it's going to be Eli Manning and the Giants. But I still think there's something about the Green Bay Packers and Lambeau Field in January where I think the Packers will pull this one off.
I like the Giants.
No,
I'll throw a wrench in it. I'm sure Matt is probably going to do it. Maybe we'll find out. But I like the Giants defense. They went to Washington in a game that they didn't need to win to move up in the seeding or anything. Already had it locked up. Went there and put a great performance defensively against Kirk Cousins. I think this game's about Eli Manning, and if that clutch factor is what we've seen before, if he makes big plays and avoids the crucial turnover like he didn't do in the Giants' first trip to Lambeau this season, a 23-16 loss in Week 3, then, it spells trouble. But, I really like the Giants' defense that Steve Spagnuolo's been implementing with the big free agent signees. Janoris Jenkins on the outside with Eli Apple, Landon Collins, playing very well this season. And I'm going to go with the defense in a very cold weather game, and I'm hoping Eli Manning and the Giants once again pull off another wild card run, because next week they'll play in Dallas if they win against Green Bay. And Seattle wins.
So, Tim, what do we say about Aaron Rodgers?
he's a bad man.
The bad man is very good at the bad game of football. But this time, the bad man is going to run into a very, very good defensive back core from the Giants. And the bad man is going to see some mistakes. And the bad man's going to run into the fact that he can't play both sides of the ball. And they have a three-headed monster as well. And that's going to be the big factor for Eli Manning, is the fact that he has the three-headed monster. And the three-headed monster is 11-5 this year for a reason. And Odell Beckham Jr. gets a touchdown. Shepard gets a touchdown. And why don't we just throw it in there too? Landon Collins gets a touchdown. Jeez. Giants run away with this one at Lambeau.
Man. All right. Well, I guess I'm going against the rush there.
Yeah, I don't know about Green Bay's defense. Because,
That's fair.
I mean, because I'm looking at Green Bay's their big run they went on since Rodgers made that guarantee. They beat three teams that are in the playoffs this season. But I mean, they beat Detroit by a touchdown last week. They beat a Minnesota team that I guess was going against their secondary coach. Beat a 3-13 Bears team by 3 points of the game-winning field goal as time expired. Absolutely destroyed Seattle. That game, give them all the props you can. 38-10. And then they were at home against Brock Osweiler, beat them by a touchdown. And then at Philadelphia on a Monday night, beat them by a couple touchdowns. I don't know. I think something about Eli Manning in the postseason against Green Bay's defense. I like the matchups better.
And don't forget, I think the past two times the Giants have won the Super Bowl, they came from a wild card spot. I don't think they won the division either of those years.
Nope.
And
Eli Manning 4-0 in the playoffs against Super Bowl winning quarterbacks.
Yep.
Beat Tom Brady twice in the Super Bowl, Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre at Lambeau.
Yep.
How about that, man? So, with that being said, we have now wrapped up this week's edition of Men in Stripes. Whew. Everyone enjoy playoff football this week. It's weird to not be talking about the Bengals in the playoffs, but that's how it goes. Everyone have a good one. Who day?
Who day?
Who day?